this being an academic channel, I posted a video about the debate on a social media page that I saw that was a flat earther um, debating a scientist. And the flat earther was a former hip hop star, Lord Jamar. And the professor was a guy named Professor Dave. And I found out that his name is Dave Farina. Now, this is not that I'm going to do, I'm going to search this guy's background, blah, 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 blah. But my video was about the professional ethics of being an expert, a PhD, a professor. And that was really where I was saying that the behavior of some of these people on the internet that profess to be scholars or borrow the titles of scholars, their behavior doesn't align with the expectations of people who function in that circle or in that industry. And when I saw um, Professor Dave, um, name calling and different things like that, as a professor, I'm thinking, what university would condone that type of behavior? I mean, because you're a professor everywhere and you reflect the institution that endorses you. So even online, and if I'm answering questions or whatever, I can't resort to profanity. I can't resort to name calling. I can't resort to um, being rude or humiliating people, because that's not the expectation of my industry. That's not the expectations of my colleagues. That's not the expectation of my employer. And the bottom line, it's not the expectation I have of myself. And I was shocked to find out. I did hear Lord Jamar say that he's a fake professor, but I've had people say I was a fake professor or I'm a so-called doctor. Or, hey, okay, that doesn't change what I did. It is what it is, right? But what I'm finding out is that there are a lot of people who are professing to hold particular titles and don't. Uh, Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, a lady running for um, mayor in LA, was on some big podcasts, and she was talking about mental health. And one of just about every other time I've seen her, she's dressed like you would expect a psychologist to be dressed. The first time I saw her, she wasn't. It was very odd, because things go with a particular industry. It's just kind of how it is. And I found that her advice, just on age and experience, was off. It sounded more opinionated than therapeutically driven or research driven. I noticed when she would make these assertions, she didn't pull from any areas of study or schools of study or site uh, based research on her assertions. She just, well, you're doing this and that's wrong, and you're doing that and that's wrong, and this is the way this is supposed to be done. And I was like, that doesn't sound right. That again, and what she was talking about is not my area of expertise, but something just didn't sound right, which made me say, okay, what kind of doctor are you? I'm a doctor of philosophy of history. That doesn't make me a medical doctor. So you, just because you're a doctor, if people have to find out what kind of doctor you are, and perhaps that's why your information sounds bad. So I'm not trying to discredit people. I'm checking behind things when I hear something that's wrong or see something wrong. Like in Professor Dave, he seems so well adapted to the understanding of science. He very well could be a professor. I'm not questioning his competence. It was just his choice of engaging with using the title of a profession that doesn't engage that way. That's what kind of threw me off. This lady, Cheyenne Bryant, I was trying to find out, what kind of doctor are you? What is your doctorate in? Are you a sociologist? Are you a psychologist? Are you a therapist? Are you, what? Because your information doesn't sound right. It doesn't matter what kind of PhD, EDD, MD, and all the other doctorates that you could possibly have, a JD, Juris Doctorate. We all function the same way. Peer review. And peer review is you do work and publish your work, and it is judged by your peers. And you also judge your peers' work. So what is significant about that is the peer review process teaches you how to disagree without being disagreeable, how to constructively offer other research, other information that the person you're speaking to either doesn't have or disagrees with in a respectful, constructive way where they learn and you can learn. So that was my issue with Professor Dave. The name calling and all of that, people stop hearing what you're telling them and their ears are catching, you just called me out of my name. This particular lady, Cheyenne Bryant, her information just seemed off. So I began checking, and obviously I go to her website. You'll find that people carefully use words. Number one, when I look at it, it says she's a writer. Is her doctorate in English? I mean, I'm a historian. Now, you can go further into what I do and blah, 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 and you'll see all these specifics. But one thing that any scholar, especially a public figure, it is almost without variation. What kind of doctor they are, where they received their doctorate from, what their primary area of study is. That is missing from her webpage. And I noticed that because Dr. Umar Johnson had the same problem. People began to challenge his credentials due to his behavior. And when his credentials were challenged, it was call the school, check it. It is what it is. Ain't nothing you can do about it. You can not like me, but that doesn't change the fact I have this education. Rarely is, I have not heard her give a straight answer. And if you look at any of her social media, and correct me if I'm wrong because I've been looking for it, it's not there. You see that she got a bachelor's degree from somewhere and that she attended something at Phoenix Online type of thing. But I am this type of licensed professional, licensed by this body, based on the completion of this academic program at this university. You just don't see it. When the behavior doesn't match the title seems to not be legitimate. I find that to be a problem because let's take Professor Dave. And I don't think Professor Dave knew his channel was going to be 4 million people and that he was going to be on all of these shows and blah, 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 and all of this. My issue is it's kind of a shtick. If I'm not a professor and all I have is a bachelor's degree, I'm just like, I'm playing a professor. Okay. Well, when you meet a degree of success, you have to begin to pay attention to what you're representing or what you're misrepresenting. And as good as his scientific information is, his behavior is detrimental to a profession that scholars make a lot of sacrifices to hold that title. It can be looked at as an abuse of something he did not earn. You should not be a professor swearing at the people you're teaching. You should not be a professor humiliating as a goal the people you're teaching. And I've looked at his videos and it's Professor Dave humiliates this flat earther or Flat Earth Dave, or he destroys. But now I understand social media works a certain way, but I begin to ask Professor Dave, is the science why people are looking at your channel more than how rude you are? And is that the goal of your channel? The channel states he started the channel to make science accessible to people, which I think is great. And even if you were going to use the title as professor, but you're not really a professor, but you function like a professional or a professor, cool. But the people you're making it accessible to, the public, Lord Jamar being one of them, you're humiliating them in a way that you don't have to. Cheyenne Bryant, in every way, appears that this is just not true, that she has PhD or doctoral expertise in anything. Because if you look at her site, every accolade from any magazine, any star that said something good about her, any award that she got, which none of the awards are from a field of, uh, from a medical body, not from the psychological study center or anything like that. It's something entertainment related. Oh, Oprah's magazine said this about her, and so it's like, if it starts off as a lie, is anything after it really valuable? And what effect does that have on people who really took the time to do what you're just saying that you did? The sacrifice that it takes to get a doctorate, most people are pretty serious about that after they've accomplished it. It's not something that, marriage. I've been married a long time. I don't like when people say, "Oh, that's my husband," and they're not married. It's like, no, that is a very unique institution that takes work, sacrifice. That's a club of people that understand. Is it as much as marriage varies? That's a club of people that understand. So I know I may be over cerebral looking into this. It may just be fun online, but we have to understand that that is guiding our society. And people are acting as though they don't see synergy between the way the American people behave and the leadership of the country. We would rather blame the leadership of the country as being bad when the leadership comes from the people. What are our standards? What are when do truths become our foundation to build your image off of something that is not true? What does that say to the people who don't know? Like, nobody believes Dr. J was a medical doctor. Nobody believes that Dr. Dre was the doctor of DJing or beat making. Nobody believed that Dr. Seuss was a doctor of, it's some things that's obvious. But when you're functioning in a professional, under a professional umbrella, or at least you are making it appear that way. Cheyenne Bryant is saying that she's a mental health, she uses very slick wording, but a mental health expert or mental health communicator, or some careful wording like that, where you cannot say, I am a doctor in psychology, I am a licensed therapist. That's missing. But I'm conducting therapy like sessions on the internet with famous people, making assertions that have no backing in research, or very little, or questionable. So even though, this is an academic channel, I think this strikes at the core of academia and integrity. And I'm not making any personal assertions of integrity against Professor Dave. I just think Professor Dave, I think in both cases, I think Dr. Shine, I think some people don't, because they haven't taken on the sacrifice of scholarship, think that it's no harm in borrowing that title or that handle. Sobriquet, if you will. But it's more than that. It's more than that, because that title endorses you to people unless you make it obvious it's just a title. I'm not a real doctor. I'm just playing one. I don't teach science. This is just a handle I use to align myself. This is my virtual class, and this is my made up university, and I am the only professor in my world. Okay, fine. Then we all know we're having fun. It is made available and clear to me. You are not an authority. Even if you have good information, I think transparency is an absolute necessity.